We've got this story from the Post Millennial. Trump admin reverses course on Biden's student debt relief. Only 38% of borrowers are current on payments. They have not collected on student loan debt for 5 years. We've got a statement from the DOE. This is amazing. It says, quote, American taxpayers will no longer be forced to serve as collateral for irresponsible student loan policies, said U.S. Secretary of Education Linda McMahon. The Biden administration misled borrowers. The executive branch does not have the constitutional authority to wipe debt away, nor do the loan balances simply disappear. That's the interesting one. Because I've heard from people, they logged into their accounts and the balance simply disappeared. So what happens now? Will it come back? Hundreds of billions have already been transferred to taxpayers going forward. The DOE, in conjunction with the Department of Treasury, will shepherd the student loan program responsibly and according to the law, which means helping borrowers return to repayment both for the sake of their own financial health and our nation's economic outlook. They mentioned 42.7 million borrowers owe more than 1.6 trillion in student debt. This is only 38% of borrowers are in repayment and current on their student loans. They say almost 1.9 million borrowers have been unable to even begin repayment because of a processing pause that was put in place by the previous administration. Since August 2024, the department has not processed applications for enrollment in any repayment plan, such as income-based repayment, income contingent repayment, or PAYE, P-A-Y-E. The department is currently working with federal student loan servicers and anticipates processing to begin next month. This is going to be interesting. I'm curious what you guys think. I'll tell you what I think. And then young people, younger millennials, or just millennials in general, with massive debt, who haven't had to pay them for 5 years, they didn't budget for this. They're going to get a shock debt overnight that they thought is gone. Mm-hmm. And if they do say, when they say this debt doesn't disappear, if people log back in and all of a sudden the debt is there, or they get a collections bill in the mail saying, sorry, the Supreme Court said Biden could not do this, it is going to be people waking up with negative money. They didn't budget for this. The economy is going to get hurt.
Yeah, I work in, when I'm not in State House, I work in real estate. So primarily commercial real estate, but I do a little bit of residential. And I can tell you, people our age, when they're waiting longer and longer to buy a house. And the last 5 years, we've seen a little bit of an uptick of millennials buying their first home because they weren't paying student loans, and they were suspended, so the lenders could count on that. But
wow,
this is going to.
Do you guys have any sense as to if, and this is totally hypothetical and it's just popped in my head, I have no idea if there's any substance to it, but is it possible that banks have taken these loans and turned them into securities and have sold them like they did with the mortgage-backed securities in 2008? I don't know, but if they did, in the hopes that the government was going to pay these things off, because if they said, oh, Biden says that he's going to pay them off, and they would say, well, we can securitize these.
In my experience, if anything can be securitized and financialized, they will. I don't know if they can legally do that, but if they can, then they're going to try it.
Yeah, I mean, again, I have no sense as to if they did or not, but if they did, if banks have done this, and then this is a ticking time bomb.
Well, most of those same banks we're talking about, the big five, They're already sitting on an insurmountable amount of commercial property debt.
Mm-hmm.
That is, they're just kicking the can down the road as long as possible. If that's the case, then that might be the straw that breaks the
the telephone pole
or the telephone pole, or more than a straw.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Again, I don't know, but I just thought of that. I was like, well, what if they securitized them? What if they're like, oh, well, the government will take care of them, Joe Biden said. And so they're just like, hey.
Well, I know private banks used to write student loans, and then Obama nationalized it and made it a strictly government enterprise. And then there's Sallie Mae, which may securitize the loans. I'm not sure, but they're kind of like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. But all of this, when I read headlines like this, that Trump's going to reverse this, I think of two things. One is he's not going to lose any votes. Not that he's running for re-election, but the Republican Party's not going to lose any votes on this, because these are art history majors that are woke and liberal and protesting on campus. And two is, hey, here's a great idea. Let's learn about personal responsibility again.
Okay, so Brave AI says, yes, banks have securitized student loans. The process involves bundling individual student loans into securities that can be sold to investors. This allows banks to provide liquidity by offering more loans and diversifying their portfolios for investors. The securitization process typically includes originating the loans, bundling them into a pool, transferring the pool to a trust, rating the securities, and selling. That's the exact same thing they did with mortgage-backed securities. That's what mortgage-backed securities were. They were backed by mortgages. Now these securities are just backed by student loans. The reason they felt safe to do that is because the government has said they'll guarantee them. So if kids you're not allowed to default on these, if I understand correctly.
Right,
so that's probably incentive for them to securitize them as well. If kids stop paying these, I mean,
yeah, I mean, I was actually a stock trader before I got into the sleazy business of politics, but that was 20 years ago, so I don't remember. But yeah, that begs the question: like Moody's and S&P, like how do they rate these securitized loans? Do they rate them according to the degree? Like art history is a minus C, and a doctorate is.
They're all AAA,
right?
Because that's exactly what what they did.
They're backed by the government.
That's exactly what they did with the mortgage-backed securities in the aughts. They were all AAA. Because they knew the government would step in, and the credit rating companies, they were all in on it because George Bush had said we need to make sure that people can buy houses, because the government literally had it backwards. They said if you get a house, that will make you a responsible person, as opposed to have responsible people need houses. It was buy a house that'll make people pay their bills, that'll make people be responsible.
The craziest.
There's a degree you can get from Harvard called folklore and mythology. Can we just break this down in business sense? Okay. You go to a bank because you want to open a business, and they say, what will your business do? And you say, we're going to provide welding services to local construction companies and to, B2C and B2B. And they'll say, what's your projected revenue? Well, there's X amount of people that require the services of a welder. And they'll say, okay, so there's another way to look at it. You go to a student loan service provider, whatever, servicers, and you say, I want to get a loan so I can learn to be a welder. Why is that? Well, there's X amount of openings for welders. They generate X amount of revenue. You give me this money, I will learn to be a welder, and then I will pay you back. Makes sense. Now take a look at folklore and mythology. You're going to a bank and saying, I'm going to open a business. What does your business do? We learn about folklore and mythology. Who wants that? Literally nobody. So how are you going to pay me back? No idea. We're going to give you $100,000 for this deal. And they shake on it.
I know what a folklore and mythology degree will get you. It qualifies you to be a professor.
Dungeon master?
No, a professor of folklore and mythology.
Indeed it does. Maybe a journalist.
Yeah.
Or maybe you can be a communist.
Yeah.
In South Carolina, which is a red state, one of the reasons that the Freedom Caucus Network exists is while the Democrats were trying to forgive student loans, in South Carolina, we're subsidizing on the front end. So they're getting student loans, that the Democrats are promising to forgive, but we're spending $52 million or $57 million in this year's budget to subsidize all these same degrees on the state level. Like, no matter what it is, whether it's mythology or welding, the mythology ones actually probably get more subsidization.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah. This is in a red state.
The education secretary said, Tim, that hundreds of billions have already been transferred to taxpayers.
Right. So
people got off. So those lucky folks got off, where the rest of the folks are going to have to pay it back.
I think Ian
and taxpayers
said that, right?
Yeah, he
said he woke up one day and he looked, his account was empty.
The son of a gun.
He didn't know that much, but it was, like 10 grand or something, I think.
Yeah.
I can't remember what he said. But gone. I don't know. I mean, the Supreme Court said you can't do that. So just because it's going to be interesting. What if Trump just says, "Nah, bring it back"?
Reverse it?
Yeah, why not? Your debt never went away.
Yeah.
They said that the debt can't be simply erased. So what happens if he just says, "We have the ledger, we'll just click yes," and then it's back? You can't zero it out. Or as quickly as they zero it out, they just go to system restore in the computer. Everybody's debt comes right back.
They can do whatever they want for the most part.
It's pretty wild when you see people like David Hogg screaming like they don't care about the rule of law. And it's like, bro, Joe Biden ignored the court like every day and then tried decreeing a constitutional amendment. Literally on his way out, he's like, 20th Amendment is now confirmed. And it's like, yeah, Joe, you can't do that.
It's the same party of mostly peaceful protests. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
saying your law and order party while the buildings are on fire behind you.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.